Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sunny and today I'm going to be doing a bookish talk. So just get a tea, get some coffee. You can either play this while you're cleaning, or if you just want to, I always play videos like this when I'm doing my makeup or I'm just getting ready for the day. So just listen to me ramble about this book. I'm gonna give you guys a head warning. This video will have spoilers and I'll also put that in the title so you guys are aware. And I have also not read the other ones within the series. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. So I only read the first one. I just need to vent about it and talk. I need to talk about this book. So yeah, so just get a coffee, a tea, and let's just dive into the video and do some bookish talk. So the book I'm going to be going over today is The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I did not plan on reading this book. So this was a book I kind of just picked up last minute at the library, and I saw that they had it and I heard about it. I've been wanting to read it. I was kind of going in this blindly a little bit. I didn't really know what it was about, which I kind of like doing sometimes because I feel like when you get a book, I feel like when you pick up a book, it's more fun when you don't know what's going to happen and you don't know what it's about, because you kind of can create your own concept of it. I've just heard that this book is really good and I've heard so many people talk about this book. I think it was kind of popular on BookTok, so I was kind of reaching out for something that I don't want to base it just because of the cover, but I was kind of looking for something that had like ruthless queen and something a little bit brutal. I don't know how I was I just was looking for something like that. When I got this book, I'm gonna be 100% honest, I didn't get into it until maybe halfway. So I was really bored and I felt like I couldn't get into it until halfway of the book. I'm honestly glad I didn't, because I do feel like I still had some fun with this book, but I'll go more into depth about like my thoughts and everything. So I'm just gonna give like a really rough, maybe butchered rundown about how this book is, but when you're reading it, you just can't help but think about the similarity between the two. If you've read Hunger Games and Divergent, so it's kind of like a dystopian world. So you have the higher and like more royal, living more comfortably and lavishly area region, which is the Silvers, and then you have like the lower and like struggling to survive, kind of having to compete with one another and ration out their living by like trying to find food, and they have like tattered clothes. They live like it's just dirty. It's hard to, like, everybody is either dying from war, they're dying from health, or they're just like dying because of hunger, and it's just like that's the type of vibe it gave. And then you have like the other worlds in between, which is like, or the other regions in between, where there's like the techies who live amongst radiation and live in like dirt clouds, and they are like obviously the technological people, and they kind of, all these people do something for the Silvers technically, but they have to still struggle to live. So you have like the Reds who get drafted into the war, and the conscriptions. I think every other place, I'm not for sure if it's just the Reds. I think the Reds do get drafted into war because the thing about this world is that the Silvers, they all have like powers, and they all have like, they can either like make plants grow, or they're water nymphs, or they can control fire, which is, you'll find out sooner or later, it's the royal family that can control fire. And then you have like, you know, like everybody has like their own different ways of abilities amongst the Silvers, and they live just beyond comfortably, where they have just like lavish housings, their clothes are just embroidered, and I get the vibe for some reason as like, I don't know why, but I kind of got like a picture in like I guess the Silvers are like dressed in like silk, and like they have like embroidered like dresses where they're not struggling, they have people work for them, and they live just so comfortably. And then the other ones, I think the Reds are the ones who get drafted into conscription, and they get drafted into like the army or the war. And it kind of, she kind of bases this, like the beginning of the book, you kind of get like the world building, and then you kind of understand a little bit of who her family are. She has like her mom, her dad, her little sister Gisa, who is also like a seamstress in the Silvers world, but she obviously like comes back and to the Reds, like that's where her home is, so she can only work there and then come back home, but they're still struggling to survive as it is. So a job for the Reds is one of the most like only means to live, like it's their only source and their only way to live. And even then, it's still, they're struggling so hard. So you can just see, you kind of get like the injustice of it. You kind of start to see like how unfair the Silvers are living and how the Reds are living. The thing too is like, the author kind of, I think she tried to have you connect with the family a little bit better by understanding, I think she has 3 brothers, or Gisa, and her name is Mare Barrow. Yeah, I don't know, if you read this book, that name, I just could not, it couldn't flow. Like I just kept reading it as Bone Marrow. I just, like, but anyways, her name is Mare Barrow. Kind of get like the concept of, I think her brothers, she has like 3 brothers, and I believe 2 of them already passed away, which every family within the community, they kind of raise flags above their homes, which I felt like was so symbolic, and it was kind of sad. And it really, really reminded me of like Hunger Games, when it's like the injustice part of like her district, of Katniss's district, and then how people would kind of like, they would represent the injustice of it, but you could see them suffer. And that's exactly what I got from this. Like, I feel like the outline of the story was really good. But anyway, so like they have like these flags above their homes that have like the stars of the people that their family members that are off towards. It could be like a mother's son or someone's husband or someone's brother, and they have like stars above their homes that represent the ones that are off in the military. And then if there's like a cross through them, I think they passed away. So I think 2 of her brothers already passed away, and before they leave and get drafted, they always give her and her sister like little earrings. So they have like 3 piercings of their earrings. So it's supposed to be like a symbolic part of the book. And then you have her one brother who's still alive, but he's drafted already, and he's already drafted even when you start the book out, and you kind of just see some letters that he's writing to them, and his name is Shade. Long story short, something happens with her best friend Killorn, and he's like the best friend in the story, and I think he was supposed to be like a love triangle amongst, you'll see like the other 2 I'm gonna go over in just a second. He's like one of her best friends, and he's like one of her best friends within the community. He doesn't get conscripted because he's working for a mentor, which unfortunately his mentor passes away and he loses his apprenticeship. So that means he's gonna get drafted into war. He has no other choice. And when they find this out, Mare is just, they automatically know that getting drafted in the war just means death. And it's just, the chances, people have died, so many have died, like millions have died because of this war. And so they know that if Killorn gets drafted, he's gonna die as well. And so what happens was, she tries to bargain with these people. I think it ends up being like Farley, which I'll kind of go more into, and she's just one of the people part of like an activist, but she has to find enough money to bargain and get him out of it so that he can not have to be drafted. She sneaks into the Silvers with her sister Gisa, because like I said, her sister is a seamstress.
Trying to explain the story as much as possible because I want to just go over my thoughts, because that's the part I want to talk about the most.
Anyways, they sneak into the castle, and then they sneak into the Silver's world, and she kind of witnesses like, you know, how easily they live, their powers, their abilities. And I really do have to admit, I like how the author portrayed that part, how she explained like the Silvers. I felt like it was really descriptive, and I was able to be more immersed into the Silver's world because I could see like how they were living, how comfortable, and you just started to feel like, oh my gosh, that's so unfair, that sucks for like the Reds and everybody else. So they go into, she tries to find something to steal so that she can sell it and then make enough money, which is already hard as it is. For the amount of money to get Killorn to bargain him out of being drafted, it was already a lot as it was. So she had to steal something really intense. But what happened was, while she was in there, her sister was in there as well, there is a bombing, and I think it's from this like activist group called the Scarlet Guard that Farley, she's like a part of it. She's supposed to be like a badass like character and stuff, and like she's a main activist. You know, you kind of get the idea of like how like she's just like tough and everything, and she fights for injustice even if it means she's dying, like, you know, that type of vibe. And then so what happens is the Scarlet Guard bomb the Silver's capital, and when they start doing these bombings, all the Silver Guards are like going around getting all the Reds and the servants and everybody, and it's just like beating them, and you kind of start to see like the brutality of it, and you start to see the intensity of each sides. And unfortunately, this whole event leads to them getting Gisa thinking that she's a thief, and then they shoot her hand, which her job is all they do to make a means to live. And also, I forgot to say too, Mare gets by thievery, which her family doesn't fully support, but they just can't, they can't stop her. They know that that's the only way that they can live, but they don't support it, and they just don't want her to get hurt. So Gisa unfortunately gets her hand shot off, and that takes a huge effect and a toll on Mare, because she feels so bad that, like she snuck them into the castle, and then Gisa ends up losing her hand, and she's probably gonna feel like, oh, that should have been me, like I should have been the one that got my hand shot off, and then now my family's not gonna be able to look me in the eyes, like looking at what I've done. Like you could tell like she was like felt so bad. And then so when she goes back to like the Reds community, goes to like a bar, and then not really like, I don't think she goes to a bar, I think she passes by and there's these like men walking out of a bar, and one of the guys, he ends up, I'm not even for sure it was a bar, they just walk out somewhere. And then one of the guys, it's just a random guy, but it's like an encounter, and it leads into her just kind of like quickly just going over, like, she doesn't say what she was doing obviously, but she kind of says just like how much her family's struggling and how unfair things are, you know, just like kind of talking. And then he gives her just so much money, more money than she can even imagine, and she's just so confused about like why would he give me all this money, and where is he getting all this money from? And then he gives her more money, and then she starts to feel like, oh, I think he's just pitying me, like I don't want to take this money. But she knows that's her only way, like she can't just think for herself. She's like, as much as she doesn't want to take the money out of pity, she has no other choice, because that's the only way that she can get Killorn out of the military and even help her family possibly make ends meet after Gisa gets her hand shot. So she takes the money, and then I think he just goes off, and then she goes back to her own thing and just goes back home. And then so what happened was, and then what happens like later on, the king and queen submit her to go to the castle and to have like a royal like arrival. She finds out that she got a job as a servant, which she's already confused, like how did I get a job randomly? And when she's serving there, she sees there's like a pageant going on. There's like, I think it's kind of gave me the same exact like competition. It's like the pageantry competition where these princesses of different areas, they're living in like nice lavish areas obviously, so they have their own abilities and skills, but they fight and compete in like a pageantry to get into the line of like to be betrothed to Cal, which is the older brother, and then Maven, which is the younger brother. Maven's mom is the queen of the Silvers right now. Cal's mom is the queen that was prior to Maven's mom. So Cal is just a half brother to Maven, and Cal's mom died, and it kind of goes into that story a little bit better, which I'm gonna be honest, I'm still like a little bit confused. So anyways, she sees that it's like a pageantry going on for the prince and the prince, and then she sees that the guy that gave her all that money at the bar or whatever was Cal, and he's the older brother, he's the prince. And so she's just completely shocked, like why would a prince, like what is he doing in that like poor area? What is he doing giving me money? And like why would he get me a serving job? And then you kind of get the idea of like, oh, maybe he's like going to be like a love triangle and like a part of it and everything. I'm not gonna lie, when this all was happening, I was like, oh, like I feel like if I had to choose between who I wanted her to end up with, I was more team Cal than I was team Maven. But long story short, I'm gonna go into it really quickly. She falls into one of the pageantry like things, and they into like this electricity type of dome, and then she finds out she has like electric power. She has like she can control electricity type of like, yeah, when I read that, I was kind of confused. And then when I would watch other people talk about this, they would say the same thing, like, oh, all of a sudden she got this electricity like type of power, like why? And I kind of get it, because maybe I think it's like she fell into the dome, and there was just obviously the Silvers have so much electricity over there, or like electrical like things, like technology, to where she could absorb it. And I think the thing about this world, about the Silvers world, is they have to have something in order to produce that. So if they're like controlling fire, they have to have a source of fire. They can't just like pull it out. And I think that's what happened, what the author was trying to portray. I think that she was trying to portray that the electrical dome was what gave Mare all that power. And then I'm thinking that because the Reds was not as like, they're struggling out there, they probably don't have like electricity and like all that stuff, so of course she wasn't able to pull electricity out to like control anything. That's just what I assume. That's what I'm just kind of thinking to get me by. And yeah, so she finds out she has these powers, and then the queen, I guess the queen can like read minds and can control things, and then it's like live on national television, because again, like I said, this is during a pageantry. So what happens is the queen and the king kind of use Mare, and they don't want the world to know that she is red blood. So oh yeah, that's the thing, when Reds bleed, they bleed red, and then when Silvers bleed, they bleed silver. And the king and the queen don't want the world to know that she is red. So what happens is they kind of use her to their advantage, and they take her and they betroth her to Maven, which is a younger brother. And you can kind of tell like Maven just doesn't want to get married. You can tell he's just like the younger brother. He's kind of living in like Cal's shadow. He doesn't, like you can just definitely tell. And you can kind of tell too that the mom just loves me, like that's her son, like it's a mama's boy type of thing. So you get that vibe, and you can tell like Cal is the one that the king just looks up to so much, and you can tell Cal's the brother that the king just adores, because he's like a man and he fights and he's really tactical and everything. So you can kind of see like the brotherly rival, you can see like the brother rivalry type of thing. And so then they take her in, use their advantage, try to teach her to be a princess and everything, and try to betroth her to Maven. Because the reason why they found this out was that when she was on live national television, instead of dying, she was able to absorb the electricity, which is really rare, I guess. And it means that she's from like an old general, old king, or like someone that passed away, like an old king, like a royal family. I felt like this was just so blunt. I feel like they could have made it a little bit like more of a shock, because if you find out you've been raised by another family that you don't that's not your own blood family. Like, it was almost like they adopted her, but they technically, I guess, the family that you see in the beginning in the Red Village, they kind of stole her, I guess, and so she was living amongst them forever, and that's not her actual parent. They apparently stole her, and she was a child of like a general, like a really strong general, a king or something like that. And then you kind of see like, oh, okay, so they use it to their advantage because they want to get like an advantage within like the military war. I don't know, that whole part was just kind of confusing to me, and some of the parts of it was confusing, like what their advantage was, but I kind of get the concept of they're just using her, and so they're just gonna do like a fake thing in public eye, but then the king and queen just know much more, which is kind of like the same thing as so many things in our world. Like, on a political sense, I guess, you kind of see what's on the public eye, but there's so much more behind it, and I think that's what the king and queen were trying to do, and use Mare as like their advantage. And so they're gonna like betroth her to Maven, and then Cal gets betrothed to like some other girl who doesn't, like, they don't give a crap about each other. So what happens is they get betrothed and everything, and then I thought the part, okay, I'm gonna just like go into this part now. I'm gonna put this book down because my hand's kind of hurting. I'm just gonna put the book right here. So the part that I was kind of like, okay, I didn't get into this book until like halfway. I almost DNF'd it because I just couldn't, I don't know, like the world building, I kind of understand the concept of it, and then when I understand the like brutality of it and the injustice part, I think that's the only thing that kind of kept me going, because, you know, like the thing about like Hunger Games and Divergent and dystopian worlds like that, they kind of give you a sense of like injustice, and then you kind of see like a political foundation, which I'm gonna be honest, I'm like the least political person in the world. It's just hard, it's a lot of concepts for me to like follow along. Yeah, like you kind of get like that sense, and you get like the unfairness, the injustice about like the struggling while the others like live so lavishly and have so much more for themselves, when they say like the world is struggling, we don't have enough, you know, like you see all that. And then I think when like the brutality of it was like when her sister got shot, and then you see like the Reds getting beaten during that bombing amongst the capital, you kind of see like how intense the book was. So I think that's what kept me going. But the only thing that kind of made me trail off, honestly, was, I don't know if it was just like the way, but I think that the author just didn't put enough like descriptions into it to like, I loved her outline of the story. Like, I understand what she was trying to go for, and I liked that part. Like, I liked how she was trying to do like the whole dystopian world. You get like the different, like the silvers and the reds, and I read a review and I'm like, wow, this made me want to kind of read it, because someone was saying that it kind of gave me like Princess Diary vibes, how they're trying to like teach her to be like a princess. And you can kind of tell too that the queen is like kind of ruthless, the king is just has eyes only for Cal, like he's like, that's my only son type of thing. Like, of course Mavin's his son, but you can tell he just doesn't favor him as much. He's more like, you gotta be like your brother type of thing. And then so you see like everybody's perspectives and everybody's sides. The one thing I felt like I wanted to be more connected with was, the only way that kept me connected was I would keep putting myself in Mare's shoes, and just, if you read this book going into it, try to put yourself just in their shoes, and maybe it might be a little bit more connected. Because I personally felt like the author, I could see what she was trying to do, but for some reason I felt like I wasn't as connected to like certain things that I felt like would probably make me feel more sucked into the story, such as like her family back in the Reds, which supposedly wasn't her family. But I would want to have more of like a connection to that family, and a connection to the older brother, like Shade, who was already drafted into the military. And then also, I feel like there wasn't much of a supporting foundation for Killorn, so I couldn't be connected to him. And apparently he's supposed to be like, I don't know, I kind of got the vibe that he's supposed to be like a love triangle. You can tell they like care for each other, and they might have like feelings for each other. And I'm pretty sure, I have a feeling he's gonna be a love interest in like the other book. And then there's Maven, who she's already betrothed to, which at first I didn't really care for. I was like, oh, I think he's kind of like the younger one, and he's kind of like a wuss. You can kind of tell he's just like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, I'm just here, I have to pretend. But then you kind of like start to get more, you kind of like him a little bit better, because he starts to like understand like Mare a little bit better, and then he starts to be more of like the one that tells her like things about the history of things. He just knows all kinds of things. He knows about like the wars, and knows about the different areas, like he knows about the techies, he knows about how they were built and what they see, and you can tell that he kind of reflects with Mare a little bit better. And yeah, so that was the thing. I was just like, oh, I kind of wish that they built more of like a foundation on, you know, like Mare's family and like Shade and Killorn, because I feel like that would have pulled me in a little bit more connected to them, to where I was more worried for them and I was more scared for them. And then Maven, I feel like her relationship with Maven was really good. Like the way that they portrayed it was really, it was supportive and stuff. But I'm not gonna lie, so when she joined this is the thing, there's like the Scarlet Guard, which is like where Farley is at, and she ends up joining. It's almost, this book was kind of like an enemies to lovers type of concept, because you can tell she's only doing it so that she can fight justice amongst the Scarlet Guard to get like an advantage, and then help her family and help all the Reds and everything, and all those who are struggling, while the Silvers live just perfectly. So you can tell she's trying, like her motive, you can tell what she's trying to do, and that's why she kind of does what she can. And obviously she can't say no, like she has no choice, like she has to be betrothed to Maven, she has to be amongst this castle, because if not, like how is her family gonna survive? They're gonna just end up executing everybody or hurting, like there's just like that type of brutality amongst these worlds. Yeah, so she ends up joining the Scarlet Guard amongst with Killorn, and surprisingly amongst with Maven, which is like, that was a giant red flag already. He's the prince of the queen, and of course, like I can get how the author, she tried to make you think like, oh, maybe he's actually a good guy, because I did kind of got that feeling, but I already saw that coming, that he was gonna be the bad guy in the end. But I personally think that maybe he's not really the bad guy. I think that maybe his mom is controlling him to think all these things. Like there was just certain things amongst the books, like like when he had certain facial expressions, when he would still show he was sad, even when he was being brutal, and when he came out about being the bad guy. And if you've read this book, you kind of understand like what I'm talking about, because he comes out to be the one that was, he kind of became the one that was, you know, a part of the bombings, and he was the one who worked with his mom in order to that's like a little bit further down, so let's just like rewind it back a little bit. So then when she gets like betrothed to Maven, you start to get a little bit more of like a feel for him, because you can see that he's like trying to be there for her. And I also liked how he knew about all these different areas, and he was really knowledgeable about everybody, like how they were suffering, what they were doing, you know. But he also has to hold his ground as like the prince and everything, and then you can start to tell that he cares for her. But then you also see that Cal, like you kind of get the concept that Cal also liked her too, because he was like the guy who just gave her all that like money in the beginning, and then he got her a job, and it's like, why would he do all that? And then certain things about how he would just kind of look at her certain ways. But I feel like this is the part though, like I kind of get the concept that Cal was maybe going to be like the main love interest, and she was betrothed to Maven, which is already like forbidden because she's betrothed to his little brother. I think that they could have portrayed Cal's like attraction and towards Maven a little bit better, to where you kind of felt more like, oh, he really likes her. I don't know, it's just the foundation of it, and just you couldn't get connected to it. You couldn't really get connected to Cal as much. And yeah, so I kind of started to fall out of the story, and I was like, I don't really feel like, I thought even the princess training part would be kind of cool, but even that was kind of like blunt, and it was like, he was like rushing, you know what I mean? And it was kind of rushing it. I just felt like it wasn't as like more immersed amongst the princess training, which I would have loved that, honestly. And you know, like you kind of get the concept of the instructors. The one character that I did like a lot though was Julian. He's like the teacher, and he ends up kind of just being there for her, even though, you know, like I think it was so sad that, so if you read the books, the part with Julian and I think Sarah, their like little story about how she got her tongue cut off, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so freaking sad. Like I just thought that was so sad, how like she spoke, and that's why the queen cut off her tongue, and then that's why her face was sunken in, and just telling that they like love each other but they just can't be together. It's just, I thought that was so sad. So I do like the emotional foundation that the author made on that, so I do like that. I think that's why I kind of kept staying in the book, because she did kind of make it like a basis where it's like, oh my gosh, that's so harsh, but you have to keep reading it. And then also the part that was so like kind of got to me a little bit more was when there was like a bombing at like it's like a pageant ball or something, and there was like a bombing. It was supposed to be like a Scarlet Guard, like and Killorn and Mare already knew about this. They didn't know about the bombing, but they knew that there was going to be an attack on specific chosen people that were advantages for the Silvers amongst the military and war and money and tactics. Killorn had to choose those people in order to execute them from the Scarlet Guard in order for them to get an advantage. And that's okay, not Killorn, Maven, because he's a part of the Scarlet Guard as well secretly. I think that's the one thing too, you kind of notice that like Maven and Mare were like, they connected because they were part of the Scarlet Guard together secretly, so they would kind of have that similarity together, to where you kind of felt more for Maven, you kind of felt bad for him, and you kind of understood him. And he does like this little sob story as to why he joined it, but it's like, I don't know, it didn't make that much sense, to where it's like, oh, you're doing it just for a friend, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. But you know, I can get what the author was trying to do, and I get it too, because I'm reading this because it's technically a YA book, so maybe if I read it when I was younger, I'd be more like, oh my gosh, I kind of see what, you know what I mean? Like, I understand the intensity of it. But the thing is too is, so there's like that bombing at the pageant ball, or not a bombing, I keep saying that. So there was like a shooting at the pageant ball that shot those specific people that Maven gave to the Farley in order to, so Maven chose specific
strategical people to kill, to give to Farley, in order for Farley to kill.
Because that way they can get an advantage when it comes to, if they killed all those people and executed them, that would cut off the Silver's advantage for like war tactics, military alliances, or like war supplies, money, and like all that type of stuff. So he chose specific people for, and proposed them to the Red Guard so that the Scarlet Guard can go execute those people, and those people were supposedly shot. The part that I got was like super sad, that I was like, oh my gosh, so sad, was like when Mare started to, even though, you know, like when Mare is like a princess as well as a Red, kind of pretending to be on the Silver side and everything, but then she gets the perspective of, you kind of see the Silvers and how they're just people as well, and we're just all competing with one another. So I feel like that part, like what the author was trying to portray, was just written well. Like I can tell you just start to understand. Sorry, I can't sit forward anymore, my back hurts. I have a toddler, so you know, just holding my toddler a lot. My back hurts. But yeah, you can kind of start to tell that, like, you kind of see perspectives of like how they're all struggling, and like everybody's struggling and everybody's just competing with one another, and they're in the end of, we're all just the same, we're all just people, and we're just over here just at war with one another. And she would like look at the people that she knows is about to die, she knows that are about to get shot, because she knows the names of the people that Maven proposed to the Scarlet Guard, but they had to do what they had to do. And she sees them like with their family. Even though they're Silvers and they're living perfectly and lavishly while everybody's suffering, she sees all these people, and like she encounters them really quickly where they greet her as like a princess and stuff, and they're like, oh, we're so excited to work with you. And then she sees one of the generals or whatever, and he's like with his twin boys, which unfortunately that part was so sad when they died and they were laying next to the dad. I was like, what the freak, like they can do that? I was like, that's so sad. That was really brutal and sad that even the kids died. That's why I felt like this book was like, it kind of pulled me in, because it kept being with like, I understand the outline of the story and I understand what she was trying to do, but I'm just gonna say my most favorite freaking chapter in this book was chapter 18, I think. And it's when Cal and her, like the cameras get cut off and she sneaks out because Cal offers to teach her how to dance for the pageant ball, and this is before the whole like shootings and stuff. And I don't know, like when they're just dancing, like this is such a corny, but like it's so corny, but it's romantic. So romantic to me, like how like they snuck out together, and it's just like messed up because she's technically betrothed to Maven, but you can tell like she doesn't like love Maven or anything like that, but it starts to make you think that she does care for him eventually, which I feel like you didn't get that concept as much as I think they were trying to portray. But then when she snuck out to go dance with Cal in like the moonlight, and he was teaching her how to dance, and you can tell he just like really has feelings for her, and then he kisses her, I was like
okay, this is like, I'm gonna continue reading it because this is really cute.
So then I kept reading it and I was like, okay. And then it got brutal, because that's right after that's like when the whole shooting comes, and then you start to see Cal become so like the tactical part of him, where he's just like, he's a military type person, where he's just
like one of the leaders or whatever for the military. I'm like the worst person at explaining this, so if you're looking for a butcher, just really quick like explanation, that's exactly what I'm giving you guys.
Yeah, so then like you kind of see him like during the whole like shootings and stuff, and how he becomes like, you know, like they try to find out what's happening, and then I don't know. So I'm not going to go too in depth about everything else because just so much happens in the story, but I like this book, but I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I feel like it just wasn't like, everything was good. Like, the outline of it was good. I understand what she was trying to do. You understand the unfairness and justice of like the Reds and everybody, and how everybody's struggling while the Silvers live lavishly, but then you kind of see that the Silvers are people too, and like, do they deserve to die? Like, they have kids, they have wives, they have brothers, like they also have families of themselves, and then you know, like, I don't know. And I think the reason why I kept staying with the story was because I understand the outline of it, and I understand the concept of it, and then the brutality of it was like so sad, and the unfairness was like, it's just unfair. And I also like certain characters amongst the story. Like, I actually did like Julian, and I don't know, he was like the teacher for her, and then they have like their own personal relationship where she kind of seeks out for like support to him, even though he's kind of more, he's like in his own lane still, but he like when he gives her that book that shows all the names of the different specific rarity bloods, and that's why she has that blood, and that's why they're trying to kill off all those people. That part like that part hit my heart because it was like, oh my gosh, that's so like, and he had to flee away because the queen's gonna go kill him, and you see how ruthless the queen is and stuff. But that's what I'm, okay, this is the thing, it's like, I don't know how I feel about this book because the foundation of it just, I feel like it just, you didn't get enough to feel connected to everybody as much as you wanted to. Like, you just wanted to, and you understand the whole like outcome of everything, but then it just wasn't built up enough to where you were like, oh my
gosh, no. Like,
that's why I'm wondering if, like, should I read the next books? If you guys have read this, are the other books, are they worth it? Because I'm really debating. Like, I like this book, but I don't know. But at the same time, a part of me also kind of hates it because I was like, I don't feel as connected. Like, I want to feel more connected to her family. And so when they find out like Shade was alive at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, she's actually alive. And I loved how like it was her brother that was like sitting and holding her and stuff. But then you want to feel more like, oh my gosh, Shade. But it never gave you like a background connection on him as much as you'd want to. So when you saw her, you're like, oh, her brother's alive. But it wasn't like anything where you're like,
oh, Shade.
You know what I mean? Like, you just didn't get that much of a supportive like foundational build to like connecting to these people. And that's how I also felt with Cal. Like, and someone explained this really well. They said that they felt like Mare didn't have much of like, you don't really like, you can understand what she's fighting for and understand, but she doesn't have much of a personality. And honestly, I think that's why I couldn't really connect with it as much, because she was just a main character. And I saw Clockwork Reader talk about this book actually, and she said that the thing about Mare is that they could replace her with anybody else and the story would just be the same. And that's exactly, like, that was perfect, because when you have a protagonist, you want to get more connected to the protagonist. You want to be able to feel for them and everything, but she had no personality. Like, they didn't build her up into a character. So I'm hoping that the other books might. And then also with Cal, like, you kind of understand that he has like this longing and like love for her, but he just can't be with her because, you know, she's betrothed to Maven, and he's betrothed to the other girl. And then even in the end though, you kind of still just don't, I mean, they didn't end up like having to like have any other romantic interactions because like after what happened, yeah, it's just, so yeah, that's the thing. I just was so confused. Like, I feel like there wasn't much of a supportive foundation for the characters to feel more connected to the story. I wanted to see more of like the romantic aspect. I wanted to have like more of the princess upbringing, and there were some parts where I just did get confused about what was happening and about who was speaking. Like, the dialogue it was kind of confusing sometimes to where who was actually talking. Then I got confused with the whole situation in general. The flow of the words weren't as much and as easy to follow as much as I thought it would be, and it was kind of confusing at times because I just feel like the words it didn't flow together that great. Like, it didn't connect with one another that well to where I could understand what's going on. So sometimes I get confused a little bit, and then it just felt like the characters were like their personalities were just like up and down. Like, it wasn't just like, you know, like a flow. I don't know. I like this, but I'm gonna be honest that Moonlight dancing in the ballroom scene will forever play in my head, and I'm like, do I like this book because of just that scene and because of like you feel bad for the Reds and everything? But I really, really wanted to like this book. And anyways, I'm going all over the place with this whole book talk. But if you guys have read this book, let me know what you guys think about it. But try not to put any spoilers in the comments because I don't want other people to click on the video and then see the spoilers in the comments. But if you can leave it like a really vague, like rough idea about how you felt. Am I going crazy because I think like this about the book to where you felt like it wasn't as much, you weren't immersed into the world as much as you wanted to be or connected to the characters as much as you wanted to be, but you understand the whole concept of it, so you kind of like want to keep reading it, and you kind of, that's the thing, like I liked it, and there are certain things where it's like, oh my gosh, that's so sad, like, you know, with the kids dying and then Julian having to flee away and he might possibly be killed by the queen. And then when they made Cal kill his dad, there's like a part when Maven's mom, and Maven comes out to being the bad guy because he's like the one who's working with his mom in order to get and understand the Scarlet Guards, like what their motives were, which that's the Scarlet Guards, that's like bad on their part because they should have thought better. Like, of course, if he's a prince and he says I want to be a part of it, it's like that just can't be that easily like, okay, I'm gonna join the revolution. He's the queen's son, you know what I mean? So it's like, and so yeah, but he kind of becomes like, you know, like a fake person to like,
I've been talking about this forever.
But yeah, I'm sorry if this video was so all over the place and chaotic and rambly, and yeah, just let me know, like, did you guys feel the same way? Am I going crazy? Did you guys kind of feel like you liked it, but then you also didn't? Like, there's something missing and you felt like, you know what I mean? Like, did you guys like the romantic part of it? Because honestly, when it came to like Killorn and stuff, I had no connection with him. Like, he was his friend and stuff, and it was supposed to make you feel emotionally connected, but I didn't care for him, and I don't like saying that. I have some connection to these characters to make them feel like if something happens to them, I want to be like, oh my gosh, that ripped my heart out. But I just didn't feel like the connection with him either. I just felt like there was no foundation for it to make you feel connected, even though I understand what the author was trying to do. She was trying to make you feel connected to. But yeah, I just want to know, like, are the other books worth it? Should I read these other books? And let me know how you guys felt, if like maybe the other books go a little bit better, like maybe if I'm missing something, if there's something I just didn't fully understand amongst the story, because I'm not gonna lie, I did get kind of lost a lot of times. But tell me if like, let me know if like the other books are a little bit easier or a little bit better, and like maybe her writing gets a little bit more different, it's more easier to comprehend. I just felt like it was just a lot of the stuff which was a little bit blunt. There wasn't like a foundation or connective like flow to everything to make you feel as connected as you want it to be. Yeah, so I just want to know, are the other books worth it? Did you guys like this book? Is there something I'm missing, or am I feeling wrong? But yeah, I am glad though, overall. I'm glad I read this book. I had a good time, and I am really glad I did not DNF it halfway, because I feel like it definitely got so much more better the second half of the book. So I honestly had so much more fun, and I'm most likely probably gonna want to read the other books, but I just want to know if it's a series worth diving into. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me chaotic and just rambly and my rumbly jumbly mess of like feelings and emotions and making no sense, but I hope I'm making sense. I just wanted to do like a video like as if we're sitting on the couch and we're just talking about the book in like a really rough, blunt state, you know what I mean? But yeah, I actually had fun talking about this book. So anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.